Hey everybody. Here I am again. I'm in a different place now. I'm in Seattle. And the friend that I'm staying with had a crown, and I drew a card this morning that said something about wearing headpieces. So I decided to rock the crown, even though I once again have not brushed my hair or like changed out of my pajamas at all. So thanks for being there with me, guys. For some reason, I just feel more inspired during this part of the day before I've actually gotten ready. So, anyway, um, this video is an extension of my other Q&A video about interfacing with the other and some of the experiences I've had in my life with extra dimensional beings, star beings, um, aliens, like whatever you want to call it, ghosts, spirits, all that crap. Um, so one of the questions I got was just about like what the progression of the contact was over the course of my life. And that is like, that has so many different facets. So I just wanted to focus on that part more in this video. Um, so how the contact began and how it changed over time. So in the other video, I kind of talked about how when I was a little kid, they would kind of talk to me a lot at nighttime mainly, or sometimes if I was playing in the woods and stuff like that too. But anytime you go into that more quiet, still receptive mode, like think about how people try to meditate in order to speak to these things or go into a trance in order to channel, it's a lot like that, right? Um, so for me, the main point of contact comes either when I get myself into that state or when that state arrives organically, like when you're getting ready to go to sleep and you get quiet. Atlas is squealing in the other room. Let's see how long it takes for him to figure out I'm doing something important and come and bug me. um, so when I was a little kid, it was more scary to me, even though the beings that I was attracted. Um, so we live in a universe that is based on the law of attraction. A lot of the information that is out there around the law of attraction is kind of distorted and not the full truth. But for now, we'll just kind of go off of that. Like if my so the beings that speak to me are going to be something that is on the same radio station that I'm on, right? They're going to be writing that same frequency that I'm on. So if I'm feeling anxious, fearful, and unempowered, I'm going to attract beings that make me feel like that. So it's, or who also feel like that. Um, and then vice versa, if I'm feeling really good and in a really high frequency, then I'll attract then I'll get information more from like ascended masters or star beings that feel really good. Um, because like attracts like. And I'll make a video about the difference between like mediumship versus magnetic channeling. They're very different, and one of them is actually kind of dangerous. But I'll make another video about that, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, so the beings that I attracted to me when I was a little kid, I didn't really have super strong scary emotions yet, so that the things that were attracted to me were not super scary things. And a lot of times I think that they were just like the spirits in my house. There was a grave near my house too. So I think that they were just kind of spirits that were attracted to playing with me because I was a little kid. And a lot of times they were kind of like singing songs to me or like, moving little things around my room when I wasn't there and like just kind of like messing with me in a very playful way. There was a time that I got to where it started to creep me out a little bit, but it was really more when I kind of realized that it was supposed to be creepy, and I realized that it wasn't really something I could talk to my parents about fully. Um, not that they were like against it or mad about it or anything, but they just didn't really have any like they just couldn't really relate to it or didn't know what to tell me about it. And didn't, it's like how do you it's kind of hard to navigate how to create space for that in your kid, right? Um, anyway, so that was my experience when I was really little. And when I say really little, I'm talking like probably between the ages of 3 and maybe 6. 6 is probably about when I started to kind of like feel differently about it because I almost kind of got concerned for myself and I was getting annoyed because it was keeping me awake at night and stuff like that. Um, Then I got to the age where I started to kind of reject that part of myself because I realized that it wasn't really cool. It wasn't something that I could talk to other kids about unless it was like very much in the, oh yeah, we're playing make believe right now kind of way. Um, definitely couldn't talk to kids at school about it. And it was kind of getting to the point where I think my family was a little like they were just exhausted by the topic and didn't really have any other like they didn't really have anything else to say about it. They didn't really maybe didn't know. And I just kind of like picked up that they were over it and I tried to kind of stop bringing it up, I think, is what I remember. It'd be interesting to hear what their like perception or their opinion of that was, um, like on their timelines, like how they perceived what I was going through or like what I said to them. I don't even remember. Um, but yeah, that was the part where I started to kind of like try to delete that part of my awareness temporarily because it wasn't okay and it was easier to just not have that. And in order to fulfill the things that were expected of me within the family, within society, within my friendships, whatever, I kind of had to delete that part of myself. And that's where like you kind of you create a fragmented sense of self because you start to like reject a certain part of yourself, right? Um, and I don't know, I kind of speculate about whether that's where mental illness comes from. Not necessarily that specifically, but things like that, where we start to reject a certain part of ourselves. So it makes me, later on, like in my adolescence, I did get some diagnosis. I was diagnosed as bipolar and schizoaffective and different things like that. And they, because of my diet, especially too, the things I started to perceive were not very nice and they were kind of erratic and didn't make sense all of a sudden. And it was because of the food I was eating, but I didn't know that at the time. And of course, the doctors didn't know that at the time either because they don't understand this stuff. Um, but yeah, so that's just like a side note is like, I wonder if that's where mental illness comes from, is just from like, it's when we start to fragment certain parts of our identity, right? Um, so then the next part was when the awareness I started self-medicating the awareness by numbing it, and so this is where a big change comes for me. And I don't know if you guys will relate to this at all, but there's a point where I mentioned briefly in the other video, I was self-medicating with people. And I went through phases of medicating with other things. And when I say medicating, I mean I'm just trying to like kind of dull my awareness. I make my frequency heavier just so that I can't perceive the things because it's exhausting to me and I don't know what to do with it. So I had phases of medicating with other things like having a beer or whatever. But for the majority of my life, I observed that I was self-medicating with people. Let me just adjust my crown here. Yes. Okay. Um, so I would do this mainly by dating people or having people in my life who had a heavier vibration. Not that they were bad or like low frequency or anything like that, but they just had a heavier vibration and they couldn't necessarily, or even if they didn't, even if they had their own perceptions, it just being around them, I matched them and it just made my life easier. Because then it was like they were a distraction from all this other stuff that was trying to like get into my bubble. Um, so I did that for a long time, and there was a part of my life where I put myself in a situation where I couldn't do that anymore. And it was awesome because I had to look at that stuff. And that was when I first realized I was doing that because I had just, it all blurred together. I didn't even realize I was doing it. I was like, what? So, so yeah, I was single and living, sleeping alone, and then all through again. And because of all the Alice is like screaming in the next room. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's kind of funny. Because of all the story I had created around it and all the anxiety I had around it, I had had experiences in the past, like when I was in my early 20s, like maybe between 20 and 22, where I was in such a dark place that I would attract experiences that were really scary and negative and kind of felt like rape. I know that's a really heavy thing to say, but there were situations where there were beings trying to actually occupy my body, and you feel them kind of, at least for me, I felt them coming back, like through my spine. So I was almost afraid to lay on my back or on my stomach with my back exposed because it made me feel really vulnerable. And just strange things like that. Like it felt very much like there is something that is watching me and sneaking up on me to try to like enter me and do things to me without my consent. It was very strange. I don't so that was what it felt like. I don't know how else to explain it. But um and that was a time in my life where I was just researching some really dark stuff. I was feeling really negative and depressed. I just didn't feel good. So that's what I was a match to, you know? It makes perfect sense. But after that experience, I had like a very just knowing that that could happen and that that was a part of it made me very scared of all of it because I didn't feel like I had any control, and I didn't feel like I didn't know yet that I could create boundaries and that I was in control and that I was stronger than all of that, right? So then, okay, fast forward back to what I was talking about before. Um, so I'm single, you know, I have Atlas. I think Atlas is maybe three at the time. So it's maybe like a year and a half ago. I don't know. That might be totally wrong. But anyway, time is weird. um, we're living in this big house, blah, 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 yada, yada. So I go to lay down and sleep at night, and the things start trying to come in again, right? And it gives me a lot of anxiety, and I'm really scared because of the things that happened before. So, of course, because I'm full of anxiety and I'm scared, I'm attracting things that don't feel so great. But this time, get this is interesting. There's kind of a spin on it. So, one night, I'm laying down, and there had been so I talked in my other video about how the Arcturians would heal me in my sleep, right? And that was something I knew about at that point. Um, so the way that I can discernment. Let's take a moment to talk about discernment. The way a lot of people ask, like, how do you tell who's who and all that stuff when you're talking to different things? And the answer to that, I'm sure, is going to be different for everyone. You can just straight up ask them, but you have to use, just like when you're talking to a person, you use your discernment to kind of ask, like, is this person bullshitting me or not? And the thing is, in my experience, because you are in this realm with all these energies, there aren't all these distractions and social etiquette and expectations that are kind of distracting us from what we actually feel about what's being said to us. It's actually a lot easier to tell the difference with these things, because if something doesn't feel right in the astral realm, it just like you can just tell right away. You're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. This is bullshit. I'm not available for this. It's easy. Um, so I'm laying down to go to sleep, and I feel some beings enter the room. And they have, like, you know, they have a vague visual sort of representation, you know, kind of tall, kind of slender, kind of like a hooded effect, even though I'm not necessarily seeing them in clothes. You get what I'm saying? Just kind of that hooded effect. And the big eyes, a lot of times I see the big eyes. And they come in and they say, I'm like, oh, who are you? What do you want? And they say, oh, relax. It's just the Arcturians. We're here to heal you in your sleep. And they kind of give me like the reassuring like touch, like, it's okay, just relax. And I was like, this doesn't feel right. This is not how the Arcturians talk. And it feels, so I'm going to give you, so when I talk to the Arcturians, how it feels is it feels like blue and purple kind of mixing. It feels very soothing. It feels like still clear water that's just kind of like gliding a little bit. It feels very spacious, and it feels like the feeling of honoring all truths without judgment, if that makes sense. So like if you can picture those things and turn them into a feeling, that's what talking to the Arcturians feels like for me. So when I am looking around and discerning, like, and trying to speak to them, or discerning whether the people, the beings that are presenting themselves to me are them, I am looking for that feeling, that frequency. And if it's not that frequency, then it's not them. If it doesn't feel like that, then it's not them, because, you know, like that's their signature, right? So I think that's a really important thing when you are learning about your sensitivities, learning about channeling, learning about talking to your spirit guides or your higher self or any of this stuff is just this discernment. Discernment happens in the third eye, right? And all it is identifying what you're feeling, what something feels like, and then kind of seeing, like using that to see what's going on, right? Um, so back to the story. Um, the feeling that I was getting from this being was not that feeling of the Arcturians. It was a feeling that felt more like static electricity and anxiety, and it felt slightly mechanical and almost like it had like this weird crackly dust around it, and it felt very quick. The Arcturians don't really have like a quickness to them. They just feel very like more like a stillness. It feels more like stillness um, than interesting. And the feeling of stillness feels a lot like the feeling of clarity when I look at those two frequencies. Anyway, sidebar. So these things didn't feel like that. But at the time, I wasn't in that space yet. Not, like that discernment was what this experience was teaching me. So it didn't feel like them. It felt like something different, but I was just kind of like, okay, like go for it, totally, like kill me in my sleep or whatever. And so I was like, okay, I didn't know what else to do. So I just lied down and tried to go back, just like trying to continue going to sleep, And so what ended up happening was immediately when I like let them in, I was like, all right, go ahead. I don't know what else to do because I didn't know that I could have told them, fuck off. This doesn't feel good, fuck off. They started showing me all these really, really disturbing images. And they put them like in my mind. It felt very invasive. It didn't feel like, oh, I'm showing you this beautiful PowerPoint that I just made. It felt like I'm inserting this into your mind, whether you like it or not. And it was yucky. And I'm not going to explain what all of them were because they're just really gross. Like on a cellular level, they're just icky. But one of them, this one's icky too, guys, but it's a part of the story, so I'm going to tell you. They showed me this image of a little blonde boy with big old weird eyes, like very specific looking little boy, human boy, breastfeeding on his mother, and they were like, I'm sorry, they were like sodomizing the little boy with this weird metal instrument, and it was really just like disturbing. And he had like these vacant, like his eyes were just kind of like vacant, like he couldn't really, he was just like, this is what's happening, like he wasn't even really aware of what was happening. And they showed me a flash of that, and it was fucking awful. And it terrified me. So, of course, that experience showed me, like, oh, I was just lied to. Like, I was lied to, and I, like, just went along with it like an idiot. And so then what happened next? I think I actually called my friend. Okay. So that's another thing I'm going to kind of prescribe to you guys if you're going through this kind of learning about your awareness and your sensitivities, is find someone to talk to. So this friend of mine has a lot of the same abilities that I do, and he's also a coach like I am. And we kind of helped each other through a lot of different things, and we continue to on and off when it feels appropriate and stuff. But having someone to talk to is really helpful just to like ground out what you're going through so you don't get lost in it, right? So if you have someone that you feel comfortable reaching out to like that, I would highly recommend it, whether that's a friend that you can call in the middle of the night when you're experiencing something weird, or if it's a coach who can help you get through it. Either one would probably be really helpful. My other prescription is going to be spirit quartz. It's a type of crystal. It's really protective, and it allows you to experience and see these things without necessarily like being a match to super negative, yucky things. And it can be a very helpful catalyst towards moving into a more empowered state within the context of these experiences. So back to the story. So they showed me this really yucky stuff, and then that was the moment where I realized that they could lie to me, but I realized that I fucking knew, and I just decided to not know, and I think we do that a lot. This is something that I see people struggle is just in their interactions with other people, with other humans, especially women, because I think that we're kind of like consciously and unconsciously, like without even really intending to anymore, women are just kind of taught that like how you feel is not as important as what's like expected of you. And I think it's just like people in general, but like women especially, like look at women's attitudes towards their periods, for instance. It's like, yes, you're supposed to just be in pain and uncomfortable all the time, but continue doing what's expected of you. There's shit like that. So like little ways that we send that message that that's how you should be without really saying it, you know? So just from years and years of being hardwired to ignore your intuition and do what's expected of you, it's like that. Um, so once I saw that, it was just a very illuminating moment for me. I'm sure many of you have also had similar moments, whether that's with other humans or with other beings. But yeah, the main message is to trust what you feel. And if you are the person who has these sensitivities and who is experiencing these things, I really want you to begin by acknowledging how you feel all the time. Identify how things make you feel, situations, places, people, energies that are coming in and trying to talk to you. Identify how they feel to you. And if you're like me, I think everyone's a little bit different, whether you are someone who kind of sees images or hears things or whatever, but just identify what the signature is and try to not label it necessarily, but just identify what it is. So for me, when something feels like that crackly black static with the little mechanicalness, and there's also like some weird like dark, super dark, like slightly purple in the background, like I have, it's almost like it's like it's like an image, but it's an image that gives me a physical sensation, if that makes sense. I think I'm a little like in a weird like in between category when it comes to these sort of abilities. I'm not like strictly clairvoyant or clairaudient or whatever. Like I associate these things with a physical sensation a lot of the time. So anyway, so when I feel that feeling, I know it's bullshit. I know exactly who it is, and I'm like, I'm not available for your games, bro. So I can just be like, no, no, thank you. And when it feels like this, you know who everybody is, and that's so the first step is to do that, and then the second step is to understand that you always have the power to set boundaries. Nothing, anything to you without your permission. Okay. If there's something coming to you in the night and like laying next to you and like stroking your arm or whatever, even if it's innocuous, but it creeps you out, it's doing that because part of you is showing up for that experience and saying yes to it. Okay. So instead of feeling like a victim, all you have to do is go inside yourself and be like, oh, where's the part of me that is cool with that? Where's the part of me that wants that experience? And you go like, oh, okay, actually, you know what? I was feeling kind of lonely and I did kind of wish that I could cuddle with someone, you know? So there's part of me that said yes to that. So just decide whether like, am I going to say yes to this or do I not want to say yes to this? You can just decide. It doesn't matter what your answer is. Just know that you can decide. Like you're never a victim when it comes to dealing with these things and interfacing with the other. You're not you get to decide. So remember, you're stronger than all of these things. And take that sentence with a grain of salt, because when you go quantum, it kind of like changes. But for the sake of this conversation, you are stronger than all of these things. As in, you are deciding your reality at all times. So if you ever don't like it, you can just decide that it will be different. It's very simple. um, so yeah, let me see. I'm gonna check my notes and make sure there's not anything else I missed. But I feel like that was the like the juice of what I was hoping to share with you guys. I've been summoned to get the master a snack. I better go do that. Anyway, so that was just one. Yes, honey, just a minute, almost done. Holy moly. So that was just something for me that was really illuminating. I hope you guys can take away some good messages and techniques from that story. Yeah, I hope that helps you guys. If there's anything else if you have more questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. Feel free to get in my inbox. I'm going to put my email below. You're always welcome to email me. Reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I really like these Q&A videos, even though this is more like an extension of the Q&A, but you know what I mean. I really like answering your questions. And if there's any other way that I can help you guys through this whole journey of learning your own sensitivities, embracing your psychic nature, or anything like that, please feel free to reach out. I love doing this. And thanks for hanging in there with me in my PJs and my crown. And you can totally wear a crown when you're in your PJs too. It totally doesn't matter. Okay, love you. Bye.